Hey everybody, this is Tojo along with
Psycho Break.
Yeah. Anyway, today we're here to talk about the Dexter New Blood. Might as well say season 9, although it's really a reboot instead of a continuation of the season.
Yeah. When we was actually looking at this at Showtime and stuff, we was trying to see it and follow it through the thing, and season 9's not even in the list, which tells me that this was purposely done as a new chapter, so to speak, or a new trilogy. So a series, sequel, if you will, to the old saga of the old Dexter Morgan.
Kind of like how with NCIS, they had NCIS and they had to spin off with LA and New Orleans and now Hawaii.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is one thing that we are going to do is we're going to do a review and then we're going to go into spoilers, but we're
going to give you a warning. We're going to give you a heads up
Yeah.
when it's time for the spoilers.
We also want to give a heads up that there's a unfiltered, triggered version, which basically after it, it's really good. It's going to be on my channel on there for a reason, just for the fact of it's one of them things that
he got pissed off at me.
Yeah, I did. But the thing is, also found out just how, even though he doesn't look like he's paying attention when we watched the show 3 times, he pointed out stuff that he pointed out stuff that I didn't even notice. So we're gonna dive into that later on.
Half the time I'm talking during the show, he's over there like, shut up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm having more detail than he is.
So one thing I want to say though about the New Blood is that Michael C. Hall has definitely got his hands in this. He's executive producer, as well as producer, as well as an actor, obviously. But this New Blood definitely has very good potential. I enjoyed watching this better than I did Heels.
And just for reference, the episode is called
Code Snap.
Yeah.
And we're going to dive into why we think it was called Code Snap and what probably triggered certain things to happen in the movie or in the show. This actually did the first premiere of the show was almost done just like a movie in the sense of the way it ended. There was no sneak peek on what's actually coming up next.
Yeah, so you didn't get the heads up for
future
episodes like you did with the original Dexter.
So you don't have to worry about spoilers, which I think is a smart thing because a lot of things can screw up the expectations.
Yeah, it really can.
I will say this, though. If you tend to do what we did before we watched it, I would recommend not doing it, and that is looking at who all's in the cast because it kind of spoils who's all in the
series.
Yeah, in the series and who the main... Not really who the main people are, but kind of lets you know what they're playing around with. It was my fault. But before we get into that, I want to get into... Had a friend, I think his name was Sean. Anyways, and he told me that he had a way of getting, and shout out to Lonnie Jaco and his wife and stuff. Lonnie was a big fan of Dexter as well. And to John David Weddle. But this Sean guy said that he had a way of actually mailing something to actors and getting autographs because that's what he loved to collect. And Michael C. Hall was one of those people that didn't charge you for getting an autograph. He actually, you send it to his agent and he will sign it when he gets to it. I.e., I was able to get this. That is the DVD version of season 1. And that got signed. That's Michael C. Hall. And it says to Kenny. Now, before this, I never wrote my name. Kenney. The only one that did that was my granddad, and the fact that he signed it like that is why I now spell my name Kenney.
I actually did not know that, and I've known him for how many years?
Yeah. But anyways, let's go into this. So the fact that Michael C. Hall, for one, is a cancer survivor, which is pretty awesome.
Yes.
And the fact that he was actually married to the one that plays his sister. But I guess, I don't know what the backstory is and why they divorced, but I'm pretty sure him going through horrific times during the cancer battle probably had a lot to play in it.
Yeah, it probably did.
But let's get into the series. So what I want to do is I'm going to rate this episode from a 1 to 10. And I would actually give this episode out of the gate. If you are iffy on whether or not you want to delve into it after the way they left season 8, I'm telling you right now,
it's well worth the watch.
It's well worth it. And I would give it a 10. A 10 out of 10 I would recommend. Me and him watched it 3 times. We didn't even watch Heels 3 times in a row. Me and him watched it that much. And this is just the beginning. And here's the guest star of it all, Ginger.
Ginger, like always. We're talking, so she has to be up here.
So, yeah, and she's probably going to lay on this. All right, so anyways, as we're getting into it, let's go ahead and...
I kind of think it's funny how Ginger does.
All right, so 10 out of 10, that's what we would recommend. If you're kind of iffy on watching it, definitely check it out. We're about to now go into what me and him like to talk to, and that's spoilers. So if you happen to watch this and you want to see about it, or if you just don't have time, you want to get to it, is it worth your watch? Do you want to hear what we have to say? Getting ready for spoilers, buddy. All right, so you made it this far, so a little slice of life. We want to just go ahead and forewarn you, Derek will cut me off a bit.
Yeah, I really will.
But attention to detail, he's really spot on. Didn't realize that until the thing. So let's dive into this. Dexter, New Blood, Season 9.
Okay, now, here's the thing. This is 10 years after the Season 8 finale, and he is on the run. The way Season 8 ended, we kind of was like, what the hell?
What the deuce?
We didn't know what to think.
He became a log dog. And that's an actual term. People who cut trees, cut logs for a living, they call them log dogs. And that's DAWG. We looked that up.
What's up with that?
What's up with that?
Anyway.
So this takes place in Iron Lake, Alaska. A very rural, small town, smaller than Tuscumbia, smaller than Guin, Alabama, smaller than Winfield. So
yeah,
everybody knows everybody. Everybody calls them friend. It sounds like a country song. And one of the things that Tojo pointed out was that it did a lot of Fargo references. Would you mind going ahead and delving into that for me?
Yeah, whenever the show first came on, it shows him running through the woods in snow with a gun, and that is the Fargo reference that we're talking about.
Yeah. So when we kick this off, it starts off, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me. It starts off with him running in the woods, and he's going to, it looks like he's going hunting for, I guess, for food, not really for sport. And he comes across a stag that is pure white, like it's an albino stag. Like this stag looks amazing. And he, first thing says out of his mouth, it's beautiful, points the gun to it, could pull the trigger, the stag runs away. But even when he had it dead to rights, you see him hesitating on the trigger, and he just can't bring himself to pull the trigger to kill the stag.
Wow, that's actually a real place. I just looked it up. It's
wow.
Basically like a state park.
As a matter of fact, they call it Crooked Lake and Iron Dog Trail.
Yeah, it's Alaska State Park.
Wow, that's cool.
That is kind of surprising. We thought it might have been a fictional place, but if it is a fictional town, it's definitely based on a real place.
Yep. Looks like it's Ironwood is the name of the actual real place.
So that's kind of cool.
That is cool. So he goes back home and he starts cutting and chopping the wood.
Yeah. And then you see him, after he gets done doing that, he puts the tarp back over the wood to keep it dry for the heat and everything. But you see him go into his house, and he goes to like a closet door or a pantry door.
Yeah.
And he sees the calendar, and all of a sudden you hear his sister's voice say it's on the floor, referencing the marker that he marks the days off on the calendar with.
Mm-hmm.
And you see his sister. Basically, his sister, Deb, is taking the place of his father, Harrison, as his
Dark
I guess
Passenger.
dark passenger or guide
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a good tie-in where she's in there, but she's not really.
And she don't really have the sister vibe to her on this at all. She more has the
Girlfriend vibe.
Girlfriend vibe, yeah, exactly. Matter of fact, she's in a shower robe and bathroom robe, is I think it's what they call it.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much tell she's not wearing nothing under it. Like she's, and but what kind of made it odd is the fact she says to him, she says, "Are you ready for the night? Are you ready for? Was it ready for dancing or something?"
Yeah, for line dancing.
Yeah, for line dancing. And his answer, instead of saying yes, he starts doing a line dance to the coffee pot. And you start noticing real quickly that he is making a cup of coffee for himself.
Yeah, but his sister loved coffee, and
A lot.
you don't see him giving her a coffee cup because, she died.
Yeah, she's not in there. Yeah, so for those that don't know, so yeah, I mean, and then he gets a bowl, and he gets a bowl. I'm thinking he got a bowl of
Like shredded wheats or something?
I don't know if it's shredded. I want to say it was granola or something. I mean,
It was something.
It was something, but he's eating the bowl of granola and stuff, and she's laying up on the table just gazing on him and stuff, and just awestruck.
He reaches his hand out.
Yeah,
like he's going to hold her hand.
Mm-hmm. And she
And then she disappears.
Kind of letting the audience know that she's not there, that this is in his head.
Yeah, like a figment of his imagination.
Right. So, with that being said, we go from, what was it?
He gets in his truck, goes to town, and he gets
Sharpened
pulled
the
over.
butcher knife. You forgot
Yeah,
to mention that.
he was sharpening butcher's knife on nice whetstone. I would love to have myself.
Yeah, that looked nice, and he was really to detail. Like this thing was sharp. Like Tojo was actually getting very impressed on how well he's like. You know how much those cost? He's like to have something like that, and he was explaining like how the curvature of the wet.
Yeah.
Now explain that to them.
Well, basically, the
whetstone.
curvature of the whetstone is he's using the middle of the whetstone whenever he sharpens the blades and stuff. So it basically makes it to where it ends up kind of concave with a curve in it. And that helps when you're guiding the blade.
Okay. So, I mean, so you at first you're kind of wondering why he's sharpening this blade. Because, I mean, it's Dexter, or in this case, his name is James Lindsay.
Yeah, but he goes by Jim.
Jim, yeah, or Jimbo, or Jam. Anyways, but as he goes and does this, he's on his way to work, and he's
And you
speeding.
see the name of the episode on the road.
Yep,
Which is
Code Snap. And as soon as he goes over that title, the thing it turns into a puddle of water.
Yeah.
And that was
some cool CGI right there.
yeah. They really, and if they start doing other titles like that instead of having it on the thing, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
So he's speeding to work, so obviously he's got to get there on time. And while doing that, a cop pulls him over.
Yes, it is a very attractive female cop, and I do not remember her name. I think it was Angela? Or
Yeah, it's
something like
Angela,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, Angela. And if you don't know who she is in real life, if you remember the Twilight series, she played as Seth's sister, and then she was in a bunch of other movies too and everything, but she's a very good actor.
Yeah. Anyway, she proceeds to ask him, just go through the run-of-the-mill stuff. Basically, they're role-playing is what they're doing.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the trailer, you wouldn't have known that. The only reason that I knew that is, and I was telling Tojo here that that's his girlfriend, was because the trailer kind of spoiled a lot of stuff on that. And I wonder if they got slack about that or something. And that's why we didn't get a teaser at the end of the episode.
They probably did get some backlash from some of the
Yeah.
fans about it, saying that you're spoiling too much of it.
Yeah. Because with fans
I
like
would have
me,
definitely said that.
yeah, fans like me and him and like Lonnie Jaco and John David Weddle, we're pretty good at piecing together. Now, the one cool thing is we're going to dive into this. I'm going to let Tojo take over when I go like this. That's when he's going to take over on what we figured out on certain things, or he figured out on certain things of where this episode go. We'll go delve into that later. But one of the things is when they're together, she frisks him, and then we go into they're making out and hot and heavy for real.
Yeah.
And what happens? What call does she get?
She gets a call from dispatch, basically saying that somebody's goats came out and are in somebody else's yard eating their winter flowers.
Yeah. And so she tries to get the intercom, and she says, well, can't somebody else do it? This one guy is actually helping find out who stole the pecan pies.
Yeah, who stole the pies from the church.
Bakery or... yeah. And
they were having a bake sale, I think.
Yeah, that's it, bake sale. And then she goes to the other guy and asks about the other guy. The other guy just got his wisdom tooth pulled out.
He's only been there 2 weeks. He said this would be nice and simple for him.
Right. And then he immediately puts the ice pack back on his wisdom tooth like, yeah, I'm too hurt to go. Like, he's just there just, I guess,
to get money.
Yeah, to get paid. So she takes the call, and they finish up next time. In the meantime, he goes into
town, and he starts walking. He sees these kids, and they say, "Hey, Mr. Lindsay," and that's when he's gonna come to the wrestling match. And he basically says, "I'm gonna try to go Eagles or
go Hawks." Yeah,
go Hawks. And it's one of them things where you can tell that he's loved in the town.
Very loved in the town.
And then he sees this guy coming out of the marketplace, and he asks him how everything's going. They start talking, and all of a sudden, he did not notice it the first time. He didn't notice it until this third time. Really.
Yeah, I saw it, but didn't know who it was because
the
I
guy
wasn't paying attention to
mentioned
the conversation.
it was Mr. Caldwell in the helicopter going to his villa. Says basically it's time for rich asshole season.
Yeah, basically like it's time for them to get their hunt on, I guess, or trophy hunt.
Yeah, makes you think that the town is one of them places where people go vacation at and everything. Tourist place, kind of.
That or to escape, but
yeah.
So he noticed that right off the bat. Not saying when we first watched it, he probably noticed it first off the bat, but I didn't know that he noticed it, and all I noticed was the helicopter. I was like, what the hell is the helicopter in there? I was more visually, I guess, focused than I was actually auditory, so, but more that we watched it and stuff, for the third time, I caught some stuff that I didn't notice before, and I saw where he was coming from. And oddly enough, after seeing it for the first time, Tojo was quoting word for word. You'd have thought he'd seen this 1,000 times, so I was very impressed with that. So the helicopter lands or wherever, and then what does he do?
He ends up taking the butcher knife.
That's right.
Or technically it's a meat cleaver.
Yeah.
If you want to get technical about it. But he sharpened all the tools. And he sees the butcher, and basically they tease.
Yeah, they tease the bloodlust that Dexter Morgan has, and this guy, and you see this butcher guy. He's just struggling to cut this.
Yes, with the meat cleaver he's using.
Yeah,
and Dexter takes the meat cleaver out of the wrap, and basically, hey, here you go. And you got my tools.
Yeah,
and then one slice, and it comes off.
Yeah, it comes off. And meanwhile, this guy had been chopping it about 5 times, and it wasn't doing nothing.
Yeah.
And he gets the one that Dexter sharpens super fine, and he does one hit, and it's like clean as a whistle.
Oof.
Beauty.
Made me want to get a whetstone and start sharpening again.
Just made me want to play with my whetstone. All right, so with that being said, so then we go from that to him making his way to the bakery.
Yeah, he goes into the marketplace to get some treats and stuff to carry to his work.
Yeah.
And once he gets there, his boss, Fred Jr., because the place he works at is
called Fred's.
Fred's
something fishing.
Fish and hunting store, pretty much.
Something like that. Yeah.
And it was originally owned by Fred Jr.'s father, Fred Sr., which you find out little bit later on in the same couple of scenes that his boss is asking him about a name, Garfield, because they're going to adopt. And Dexter has that puzzled look on his face. Like,
Yeah, because you're thinking kid.
yeah, you're thinking kid. It says, me and my husband's about to adopt. And then he shows Dexter a picture of a little dog. Looks like a beagle, kind of.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess.
And he asks, does this look like a Clifford to you? And then he says, I think, or Garfield.
No, it's Garfield and some G
And
word.
then he said it looks more like a grimace or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And Dexter basically says, on this, I'm going to be Switzerland.
Yeah,
basically saying he's neutral.
Yeah, and the guy's like, good choice. That like good idea. Stay out of it, kind of thing. So, right as he gets ready to say that,
then you see Matt and his friend Bill walk in.
Before Matt and Bill walk in, he takes a deep breath and says, "Here we go."
Yeah, like he saw him coming to the door, and he was just getting mentally prepared because he knew it was going to be some
bull crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the things that I didn't catch, but we'll get into that too, that you pointed out. But this Matt Caldwell guy, he has an attitude about him when he comes into the room, like he's got to show somebody up, like he's very insecure about himself, like severely insecure.
He has the attitude of I'm better than you.
Yeah, and he's got this, and he's very, very insecure. So he'll ask Dexter. No, that's another thing. He looks at his name tag, Dexter's name tag. Of course, it says Jim Lindsay. He calls him Jane. Then the second time he calls him Jam. But anyways, we'll get to that. But as for a hunting
he says
knife,
that he's wanting to get a hunting knife and a gun.
Yes.
And basically, what happens is Dexter asks him, "Okay, do you want a filleting knife?"
Yeah. And he says, and he kind of says, "Well, yeah." And then when Dexter goes to pull out the knife, Matt points towards this other knife, like he's kind of
which is kind of like a K-bar knife.
Yeah, kind of. He's really just disregarding whatever Dexter's saying. It's kind of like, I'm going to talk over you now, and that's basically what he does. Like he'll suggest, and he's like, "Oh, I want to get that."
He's kind of like me.
But the other thing is too that he did when he got the knife out and stuff. You could tell
he went kind of like, "Ooh."
Yeah. And that plays a big part later on in the thing. But he goes, and what does he say to him when he does the knife thing?
What's wrong? They say, "I got a thing about blood."
Yeah. And see, I thought it was Matt that said something about, "Are you afraid of blood?" But no, it was Dexter that said, "No, I got a thing about blood." And he goes, and then what does he say to that? He says something to that.
I don't really remember exactly what he says.
Anyways, it's kind of like
kind of like he just went in one ear out the other.
Yeah, kind of like Matt's just trying to really be like, "Ooh, what, you scared?" Blah blah blah, bull crap.
Well, he says that now for the gun, and Dexter points out a Remington.
Yep.
And he points out that the Remington's a very good gun. You can drop it 12 or so times, and it still shoots straight, dead on, everything, which is actually a very good quality of having a gun.
True.
Especially being in the wilderness like that. But the guy says, "No, my friend has that exact same gun. I want something that make his gun look like a super soaker." Then he points towards a gun that's basically like an AK. And you don't know what I'm talking about, AK. This is either a semi-automatic or
basically doesn't look like a hunting weapon. Like this weapon shouldn't be.
It's like a military gun.
Yeah, and even Dexter, aka James, pretty much points out that this, like, what are you going to use it for? This isn't a hunting weapon.
And the gun's $9,000.
Yep.
So he asked me one. He said, "Yeah." So he then gets the computer out with one hand, and I mean it's very fluid on how he gets the computer. It just grabs up from underneath, twirl, put down, opens up, asks for ID. And he's like,
man.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
You know me how.
Yeah.
And everything, and ask him how long he's been here. He said a couple of years. And then he finally gives Dexter the ID, and he mentions something about how he was on Fred Sr.'s Pee Wee League in baseball and everything.
Yeah. And then pretty much tells him that he has to wait, and he says, "Why you got to be an What are you?
Why you gotta be an Eagle Scout?
Yeah, Eagle
because
Scout.
when Dexter did the ID, it's red flagged by the federal database, which usually means a 24-hour hold for them to kind of just investigate what's going on, why it's flagged.
Yeah, and he really tries to push the narrative that he's, that he's somebody, and that and just this one time he can let it go, and he's saying, well, if I do, Fred won't have a business. And
yeah, you don't want Fred to have to close down pretty much.
So at this time he says, okay, I'm taking this, and he grabs the knife.
And he goes up behind his friend Bill, and he has the backside of the knife, not the sharp part, almost at his friend's throat, wraps his arm around, kind of like he's going to cut his friend's throat, but it has the dull side towards the skin. Mm-hmm. Scares the crap out of his friend.
Which is basically another thing of him trying to show who he is. Like he's
the boss.
Yeah. And then where do we go from there? There was another. What happened after that? I'm thinking.
From there, he basically says that he can start drinking early, and they end up going off to the tavern. And then you see Dexter leave, and he goes to the station where his girlfriend Angela, the cop, works.
Yeah, and the girl that does the dispatch and stuff, she's in a wheelchair. Apparently, she's a double amputee. Like she doesn't have any of her legs, which that plays a factor on what you'll notice in the next episodes. But and they're really taken back on the fact that Matt Caldwell got red flagged, and they start asking James Lindsay, aka Dexter Morgan, why was the FBI red flagging his
basically thing? Everybody knows everybody's business in a small town.
Exactly. And speaking of that,
when Dexter's coming in and everything, she's asking about that. Then the cop that went to do about the pies brings in the pies. Basically, now we're gonna have to investigate these one at a time. Yeah. Basically, and they're gonna eat all the pies.
Yeah, and he's like, those pies smell nice. Those, I don't blame him on that. Those pecan pies.
Ooh, sweet pecan pies.
But so then he starts to overhear them talking. He's listening.
Basically, the dispatcher said, "You know Matt forever. Why do you think he'd be red flagged?"
And he's like, "This is a normal procedure." He said it'll probably clear up within 24 hours and stuff. Like, basically tell him not to worry about it.
And he mentions that Matt is basically, he even says that he's an asshole, but he's generally a good guy.
Right.
And he mentions about the boat accident.
Who mentions it? Because it's the cop that talks about it.
Yeah, the cop.
Actually, it's the dispatcher that brings it up. Then the cop and them are conversating.
And the cop is the one that says about how he was laid up in the hospital.
Right. Gives the backstory. Now, Dexter's actually listening to this, but he kind of plays like what Derek does sometimes with Tojo, where you don't think they're listening, but they're actually listening. And he tells them says something about
what are we going to do about a stop sign at the packing plant?
Yeah. That's
just an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah. Just brushes it off like he wasn't listening, but he was actually listening.
Yeah, but the cop actually looks into Matt Caldwell's records. I'm sure there's no real spots on his record.
No. He says there's no real red flags on there.
And he said spots. He said, well, there's a couple of spots.
Okay, I thought you said red flags. And
then no.
Okay. So, yeah.
The red flag is what Matt says later on.
Right. So then they tell him, well, she's in a meeting right now because he's getting ready to go in there and stuff. And it looks to be like Angela was looking and looking at some...
She was in a meeting with another officer.
Yeah, and it looks like there's been some missing girls on the actual murder...
Yeah, on murder board.
Yeah, on the murder board. Or missing board, we should say.
And basically, it's like Angela is the chief of police in the small town, and the officer that came in, we don't know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that he's more like a sheriff or something.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, the one thing that Tojo pointed out, though, is now that he pointed this out, and we watched it again and stuff for the third time, a lot of the ones that this person's going after does kind of favor a lot of Deborah Morgan. However, also we saw the picture of the Angela and her sister, and Tojo came with the conclusion that
her sister's probably one of the missing girls, which is the reason why Angela became a cop.
Right, which is something that hadn't been explained yet. So we're going to find that out too. So I thought that was pretty good on that he pinpointed that. So that was like another thing. So that was cool. The other thing is that Angela has a lot of the features of Deborah
being
Morgan.
Dark complected, the dark hair.
Yeah, and also being an investigator and kind of being very assertive.
Just like his sister was. Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, this was his, he was adopted, so this ain't his real
Just without saying the F word as much.
Yeah, she didn't drop the F bomb. And that was another thing. This Deborah Morgan that Dexter sees doesn't drop any F bombs.
She only drops one in the entire episode.
When did she drop one?
Whenever he's going to the truck after doing the deed.
Oh, right. Okay. When we say doing the deed, we're talking about when he had to take a shit. Anyways, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So then they go from there, and
they talk in the office. He gives her a kiss, talking about getting ready for line dancing that night.
Right. So at that time, after they get ready to go the rest of the thing, it goes back to him going to the forest. This time he's going to hunt the deer, the stag again. However, he gets close. This time he goes to point his gun at the stag, and the stag, the stag runs off. So he doesn't
pull the trigger.
He can't pull the trigger. But then he notices something that's off. He hears a twig break and stuff.
Not this time,
right. So then he goes back home, and when he goes,
no, he doesn't go back home. It cuts to it being nighttime.
Right.
He's in front of the tavern.
Yeah.
And you see where his girlfriend just pulled up in the cop car, and basically she looks at him and says, "Ain't you glad to see me out of the state issue clothes?" So, well, you rock that outfit.
Yeah. He's like, "You rock that outfit," and she's like, "And that's why I like you, James." So they go into the tavern.
Yeah, and he goes to order his usual for them, and the bartender basically already knows the usual. Yeah. He goes up there to order, and she says IPA and whatever drink she's drinking, and then vegan nachos.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yep, that's what it was.
Wow.
And
I didn't catch the vegan. I call it nachos. No, that's cool.
And basically, he says, "Am I that predictable?"
She says, "Well, I could order, what was it, pork belly?" Something?
No, she said, "Well, if you want to spice it up, I have a pickle or something."
Oh, okay.
And basically, whenever she does that, he's like, "No, I just stick to the usual." And he just put it on my tab, and she says, "Why Matt is paying for everybody's round tonight?" He looks over there at them partying, and basically they're pouring alcohol on him and all that. They going, Jim. And he just put it on my tab anyway.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have an annoyed look, but she has a like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Look.
I think in some sense she was kind of, at least the tab would got paid. But yeah, so that was kind of cool. And then
kind of like she knew that the tab, if it was on Matt's, it'd be paid right away. And tonight on his, it'd probably be like at the end of the month.
Right. One thing you noticed, so when they walked into the tavern, though, is that the girl in the wheelchair has two. This is something
prosthetic legs. Prosthetic legs.
Yeah.
And she's doing line dance and everything. And his girlfriend says she'll do just about anything to bust out that rhinestone skirt.
Yeah. And so there's that on that first thing. And the atmosphere seems like it's a happy town, that they're happy with everything, that it's really go lucky and everything.
They sit down at the table, and drink a little bit, and then they said, okay, we can't let Fred and whatever that girl's name is that was dispatched.
Yeah.
Can't let them have all the fun, so they get up and start line dancing.
Right. And then it kind of does like a what they call it, a montage, but it's not really as short. It's kind of fades into where it kind of gives a sense that they've been there a while. And then it goes to where Dexter's at the table and while
Just watching his girlfriend.
Yeah, just kind of admiring the view. You know how it is, guys. And
oh yeah.
And before he can really get into it, you can see him grinning and stuff. Guess who walks up?
Matt. Basically, again saying, but hey, why don't we go ahead and get the gun because we want to go hunting in the morning. And Dexter again says can't because of the rules. And for a second time, Matt calls him an Eagle Scout.
Mm-hmm.
Which Cycle Break did not notice it at all the first 2 times they watched it.
Yeah, I didn't. Like I heard it, but it didn't like go. I wasn't catching it. I was scratching my head. That's on top of this, not the other one. But so yeah, so basically you kind of from summing it up, you get the fact that that you can still see that Dexter Morgan does not like this guy, like within his body language, like dude, don't sit down, don't like he's got that look like don't even sit down here.
Yeah, then he sits down and talks about the gun and all that. And then he says something about he's having a party tomorrow.
Your girlfriend's a cop.
Why
right?
don't no, not yet.
Oh.
Why don't you come? And Dexter says, I'll think about it. And he sees Dexter looking at his girlfriend and says, oh, your girlfriend's a cop. Might need to come stag. There'll be a bunch of red flags.
Yeah. And with that being said, then we cut to the
girlfriend walking up to the bar, drinking her drink, and you see this young girl who is asking how much is a plain burger, and the bartender says $7.50. She said, "How much is it without fries?" Darling, that is without fries. And the girl's counting her money, and she says about how she has to make sure she has money for the fare because she's wanting to get out of there.
Yeah, for the bus fare, yeah.
And Angela says, don't worry about put it on my tab with the fries. And
Thanks, ma'am.
The girl says, thanks, ma'am. No, not thanks, ma'am. Are you sure about that, ma'am?
Oh, right.
And then Angela says, I'll be double sure as long as you don't call me ma'am again.
Now, before we go any further, one of the things that Tojo noticed that he brought up that he thought was going to happen that we might end up seeing, and that was
the bartender.
The bartender might end up coming up missing next
because he has a lot of the features of Deb and everything.
And I'll tell you who I think is next, but when we get to that, we'll address that.
Yeah. She has a lot of the same features as Deb as far as being dark complected.
Well,
the dark hair.
The point you pointed out, we'll get to that. When I say delve into that, then we'll delve into it when we get to that part because then we'll be kind of making it confusing. But anyway, so then after that, that's the night. And he's at the table with her.
And basically, she's talking about the red flags and how a lot of things fall through the cracks. And he just basically tries to do a subject change.
Yeah, can we talk about something else? You're not at work right now.
You're not at work. You're clocked out.
I think what triggered that, though, too, she said red flags and things falling through the cracks. And he's like, yeah, let's not talk about that.
Because, after all, he's on the run himself.
Yeah, he fell through the cracks big time.
Well, then she gets a notification on her phone, and it's her smart doorbell, which I guess is kind of like a ring or something, but it said ADT. And her daughter was having a bunch of friends over, and it was more than what she was comfortable having over.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, that's a lot of friends. Says, well, I guess I got to go be a mom. Even though I'm clocked out, you can never clock out of that.
Yep. And
I laughed about that.
Yeah, and that was, and he actually and what was kind of inconvenient about that is that she got that call, or notification on the doorbell when he was like trying to say, "Hey, can we finish what we started in the truck at this
you
thing?
pull me over so and so place."
And then that happened. So then they leave, and
he goes outside, gets the fresh air, and that's whenever you see a semi truck pulling up to a diner, and you see a guy get out of the semi truck from the passenger side. The driver says, "Man road that way, a little piece," and you don't really see the guy's face or anything.
Mm-mm. So in this point in time, if I'm not mistaken, is this when he has the dream?
Not yet. He gets in his truck, goes home, and while he's sleeping, he has a dream.
Okay.
Now, earlier in the episode, before he went into town, and before he even marked the calendar, he set out a line for ice fishing. And basically what it is where you will drop the lure or whatever you're using to fish with in the water where it's cut out, and it be tied onto a chain.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a little board there where when the chain gets pulled hard enough, the flag that is bent down will pop up to let them know fish is on the line.
Right. Which leads us into the dream. Now, the dream that he has is that the
flag
pops up. He walks up there to pull the lure in, and
he's pulling it in, and instead of it being a fish, it is a sister.
Yep, and along with his sister is the dark passenger that happens to be on hold of his sister and pulling her underwater.
Yeah, which kind of signifies that where Harrison was his dark passenger originally after he died, now Deb is his dark passenger.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if Harrison was a dark passenger. Harrison would have more like been his guardian of his reasoning, trying to keep him out of trouble. And it was kind of like it was a battle between the dark passenger and the code, I guess.
Yeah.
And she was not winning this one at all.
Yeah.
And she flips out. He wakes up. He's fixing breakfast.
Yeah.
And she says one of the main things that stick, that we'll bring this up in a little bit, but she says you got to stick to the routine.
Yeah.
And he's like, routine,
it's been 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And when she says that, he's like, he mumbles routine, but he's cooking this steak or this ham, or they call it ham, and he puts hot sauce on it out of the skillet and just, I guess it's an iron skillet. It doesn't really matter. He just starts eating it, and it shows you kind of like a montage of him doing his routine, and then him saying,
where he goes, gets the treats at the marketplace, right. Comes in, and basically whenever you see him again, he's opening up the box.
Right. So,
but he's doing his normal routine.
Right. And he's very meticulous on being poignant on his time. Like, the store doesn't open till 9. He opens it right at 9. Like, there's no...
Now, before all this happens, he's running through the woods again with his gun.
Right.
And he sees a deer, points the gun at it. Basically, he's looking at the deer for the scope. Then the deer runs off because he heard a twig snap. And whenever he goes into his house cooking his breakfast, he says, "You ever get the feeling that you're being watched?"
Yeah. And that's when she talks about the routine. So you're good point on that one. So then, all right. So now that's done, we get to where we're at the store, and
he basically gets his apron on, gets his little name tag or badge hanging around his neck. Mm-hmm. Then he goes and looks at the clock, 9 o'clock on the dot. Turns the sign from closed to open. Opens up the computer, checks to see Matt is still red flagged.
Right.
So he thinks nothing about it. Regular day, he says something about lunchtime. And he goes to the tavern to get his tuna sandwich.
Which is his routine.
Yep. But the tavern is closed due to the fact that some big oil wig is having a meeting in there.
Yeah.
And you see a bunch of people protesting and everything.
Which this is when it actually introduces you to Angela's daughter named Audrey.
And you just see him asking what's going on. Then all of a sudden you see Angela come up from behind him and says it was her daughter. Are you supposed to be in school? You have a test today. And she says, "What good is math because of this going on and everything.
Right.
And the guy, the oil tycoon, whatever you want to call him, comes out.
With hot chocolate.
He has hot cocoa for everyone. And basically gives it to everybody. And he's saying how he's happy to see everybody protest and everything, that freedom of speech is what makes America great. And Audrey, Angela's daughter, just takes a cup of hot cocoa and
when she pours it out, man, he gives her a
evil look, but then sees the mom that's a cop.
Yeah.
And that evil look turns back into a nice look real quick.
But he gives her the look like if looks could kill, like it kind of makes him sus.
Yeah, it really does.
But anyway, so with that being said, this is where I was coming into, where I was telling Tojo that if anybody was to get kidnapped, I think it would be her. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there's got to be something that sparks Dexter Morgan into reawakening his old stuff.
And he hasn't reawakened yet.
Yeah. But when we start coming in, this is one of the many things of the routine that kind of goes out of kilter, that kind of starts to unravel. Because if he doesn't stay in a routine, chances are he might lapse.
Yeah, and we're going to take a little break right here. We'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, we are back.
Or we could just continue talking. Sorry about that. So basically, like I was saying before he paused it, was basically that, okay, so, and I thought that if anybody's going to be kidnapped, it's going to be Audrey because of the fact that he gave her that if looks could kill, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah, so we now go to Dexter going home, and it's nighttime, and he sees someone is in his house.
Right, and he grabs his axe.
He grabs the hatchet. You call it axe, I call it a hatchet.
Yeah, it's a hatchet. I'm sorry.
Force of habit for me.
Well, it's also force of it almost 10 o'clock here, or 9 or 11.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyways.
Anyway, he grabs that and he goes in the back door, and he gets to the person that we saw
back
earlier.
door of the house, not of somebody's back door. Let's be clear.
All right. And he goes, like he's about to take the guy's head off with that hatchet. And the guy turns around and says, "Are you Dexter Morgan?"
And he almost says Harrison to the kid. And then
he doesn't
immediately
say nothing at first. Then he says, "I'm Harrison." And he almost like...
And then
he sees his sister.
And this is where I noticed something, and I don't know if Derek noticed it or not. Or
I honestly did not notice it at first.
But she says, "Don't do this because everybody you know will die. Everybody will die.
Everybody that gets close dies."
She starts naming off people that died. And then she opens up pulls up
her shirt.
Yeah, and you see her outie. Ugh. Anyways, and so she pulls out a bullet out of her stomach and says, "Everyone you love will die." And as she says that with the bullet, you start seeing the blood
pour on Harrison's chest.
Yeah, as if he got shot. Which I don't know if that's foreshadowing or what, but if that does happen, not only would this suck, but yeah, Dexter's going to be in full kill mode.
Yeah, but we ain't there yet.
No, I'm just saying, if anybody of his families get killed, it'd put him in full kill mode.
Yeah, but like I said, we ain't there yet. Then he basically turns him away, and
he ends up having to walk home.
You see him looking at the only picture he has of him and his son.
And burning it.
And then he goes outside and he burns it. And whenever we first saw that, I said, I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, because the kid been looking for him, and now he's going back in the code.
Not just that, but the fact that he's burning up the only picture he had of his son.
Yeah, which I guarantee you, the kid probably has a copy of that picture, and they'll probably
he probably does.
But
because he said it looks just like I remember you.
Yep. But yeah, burns the picture. That was kind of disheartening on that.
And Deb says you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So, and then is that when they cut to the scene?
That's when it cuts to him running in the snow, points the gun up again, sees the white stag, and he puts the gun down and he takes the glove off his hand and goes like he's gonna let the stag smell of his hand.
And the stag even does a little thing like it's trying to let him
like
know.
a side dash kind of.
Yeah, like it's trying to be intimidating to him, and it's not working.
Yeah. So he ends up getting right there in the stag's face where he can almost touch the stag.
I think at one point he did touch the stag.
I think the stag started to smell his hand.
Yeah, it did. That's what it was. And he makes eye contact with the stag. Like you see his face in the and then
all of a sudden you hear the gunshot. You see blood splatter on Dexter's face.
Yep.
Matt comes running with that AK. Oh, did you see that? Did you see that?
Almost tagged you, bro.
Almost tagged you too, bro. Dexter took his gun with the butt of the
without
gun.
hesitation.
Without hesitation. And
wham! He coughs
right
up blood.
across here.
Yep. And he falls back.
He stumbles back a second.
Yeah. And immediately
Dexter takes the guy's knife off of the side.
spits.
And like he's about to stab the guy. And then
It dawns on him.
says, no, I'm no better than that. He spits, then he takes the knife, cuts the deer's throat, and then moves the head up to where the blood will start running towards Matt.
Where Matt's blood was spilt, so the deer's blood actually ends up mixing
End up
in.
going in, so it'll be inconclusive finding anyway if
Yeah.
they're able to pull blood.
Yeah.
So then after he cuts the deer's throat and everything, he wipes the blood off with a knife
On Matt's.
Matt's pants, puts it back in the sheath, and then it cuts to him basically getting prepared, setting up his kill room. He don't have all the material, so he's taking the plastic off of his greenhouse.
Right. And he's doing with what he can. Now, this is what's cool, because when he sets this up, immediately like, holy shit, how's he going to do this? Because in the other Dexter series, he actually had...
Everything was so meticulous, so clean.
Yeah, he even had needles where anytime he was going to do a kill thing to somebody, he'd hit them with this needle thing. They'd go out and they'd wake up. And he'd do this like revelation, kind of like a judge and jury thing of pictures of what they did and all this other shit.
Yeah. This one, he didn't have time to do any of that. It was a spur of the moment kind of thing. And what was so interesting about it to me was the fact that whenever he did this, he said before he even put the body on there, said, "This is not what I'm used to, but it had to do."
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the naked body on the table, taped down, tied up. And the cow he ain't awake yet, but Dexter grabs his hatchet with the blunt side, knocks the glass out of a lantern, and he basically makes his own homemade slide, because you remember how original series he always took a sample of their blood for a trophy. And he does that, cuts him in his face with the knife. Same knife that Matt had, that he bought at Fred's, by the way. And he cuts the face a little bit, gets the blood, no big deal. Puts two pieces of glass together. Guy starts waking up, struggling. What's going on? What's going on? And Dexter says, "I ain't an Eagle Scout, but I know my knots."
Yeah.
The third time the Eagle Scout reference was in.
And then the other cool thing is, I forgot what the guy was saying, but Dexter mocked him by taking the knife and go, "Ooh," like that too. Like, took the knife.
No, basically the guy was saying something, and then he said, "Tell me what you did." And he says, "About the deer?" He says, "The deer had nothing to do with it. Deer was pure and beautiful and all that. Deer was innocent." And he says, "Tell me about the boat." And he says, "Or what?" He says, "Or I kill you." And he takes it out and goes,
Yeah.
and you see the guy trying to squirm. "Oh, crap."
Yeah, he's like, they do what he did. So
Because of the fact that now he's tied down. He can't do nothing to defend himself. He's now having to be submissive, and he's not used to that.
Yeah, and there's no safety word on this one.
That's the truth.
And what else was it? And he says, "Well, explain to me." He says, "I'll tell you everything," or something like that. And he's like, "Tell."
He doesn't want to say nothing about the boat, so then Dexter actually goes into detail with what Bill said on how the wreck happened and everything. He did on purpose. And he says, fine, I admit to it. And then Dexter gets the knife up, ready to stab him for the final blow. And he says, don't do this. I had a city upbringing. And then talking about how his mom died and how his father was always gone. And said, you blaming this on your upbringing? And then he sits back and he actually says that both of my parents died when I was young. And then he talks about how he would have been nothing if it wasn't for Harry, aka Harrison, but he always went by Harry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is where his son's named Harrison.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Anyway, he did all that and basically explained the situation of how he was adopted and he has a cold and all that. And then he finally gets ready to kill him.
So you're not going to kill me? We're past that. What does he say? We're past the point of no return right now.
Yeah, we're past the point of no return. And I mean, what was so funny about it is he says, dude, right whenever he stabs him in the heart.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what he said.
I don't remember everything he said, but he said, dude.
Oh, yeah, he said something like, he said, well, like you always said, life is short, dude. And stabs him, and it's like he has a mental orgasm of the blood. Like
the euphoria.
And by that time when he does that, he gets
a
call.
The slide in his hand. He gets a call from his girlfriend.
Yep.
I thought you were going to be here at the
Tree
festival and everything. He says, oh, Fox in the hen house. It's a mess here.
Yep.
So he hangs up the phone. And he says, now what to do with you? And he says, I might be a monster, but I'm an evolving monster.
And that's when he throws the slide on the body.
Yep. And then he takes out the, I call it a ricochet saw, but a lot of people call it a sawzall.
Okay, sawzall.
But
he's like,
he takes that out, and you hear some Christmas music playing in the background. Yeah. And he cuts them up, bags them and everything. Now what to do with you? And he's thinking he sees 25th annual ice fishing tournament or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, well, it's not Miami Bay, but it does have a hole in it.
Yep. So then at this point, he wraps him up after he cuts him into pieces, puts him in the...
you don't see him put him in the truck or anything. You just see him wrap him up and everything.
Yeah. And you see his truck
he goes to the truck, and you see his sister standing by the truck, and his sister says, what the fuck are you doing? Not listening to you. Gets in the truck, starts driving off.
Right. And when he does, he actually passed by the tree festival, which he also passes by his girlfriend and
her daughter and dispatcher.
Yeah, which he's on his way to the bus station.
Yeah, and he sees his son before he gets on the bus, hands him a coat, and then he first words out of his mouth was, here, sits down and says, after being in Miami, I can never get cold. I can never get used to this cold.
Right.
So he's basically admitting he is Dexter Morgan.
Yep. And
so he ends up taking Harrison home with him, and you hear his narration like you used to back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that now he's going to be for his son what Harrison was for him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is basically where it cuts off, and that's why I said earlier, not yet about son, because now that he's being the parental figure again and going to try to be there for him like Henry was for him, he's basically to the point now if his son died or something, that will emotionally wreck him. and put them on the killing spree.
And honestly, before we get into any more, when it ends, it pans up and pretty much you see all these blood spots all in this snow area around his house,
like going towards where the hole is in the water.
But the other thing is, though, that I was wanting to get into is that I don't think that his son knows exactly what he does. I think this is something he's going to try to hide, and I think eventually his son's going to see what he does.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and do this again, in case you didn't watch all the way. We give this a 10 out of a 10, both of us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, we watched it 3 times.
And with it being called New Blood, we think this is going to be like a sequel to the original season. Because if you go 1 through 8, this season 9 is not even acknowledged in the lineup. No,
it's not. We are going to make another. Now we're going to say this right now. We're going to go ahead and put this on the Psycho Break and the Becca Gaming and the Deto's OC. But we're going to let you know right here, right now, we have plans for a new channel called Slice of Life, which is going to be all about this.
Yep.
We're going to end up getting the book that the TV show is based off of. We're going to read the book on there and everything.
Mm-hmm. Discuss the book and everything like that.
Yeah, read a chapter and then discuss the chapter after we read it.
Yeah, so that way y'all get to see, for those that are Dexter fans and stuff, get to see a little bit more. And it also gives us a chance to delve deeper into
and we're also going to go back season 1, episode 1.
Right.
Rewatch it and give a review off of it. Even though we know what happens, we're just going to give a review as if we don't really know for sure.
Right, because it doesn't hurt having a refresher. But if you happen to stay and you watch this, definitely watch the outtakes on that. Also, premiering only on the Psycho Break channel is going to be triggered version of this. Now, I admit to you that the triggered version, I was upset, but when you watch it, you'll see why. But the triggered version is going to be good. But in all essence, so I do want to thank Tojo for the showtime. I also want to thank Tojo for the food that we had tonight also. But guys, if you like this, be sure to rate, comment, subscribe. And as always,
that's a slice of life.
It's slice of life.
Whatever.
So how are we going to wrap this up? I mean, because basically, there's a lot to tell, and I don't want to spoil it for everybody.
Yeah, we don't really want to give too much away, even though we are going into detail. But at the same time, it wouldn't be a good review without going into detail.
Because I don't want to tell them what happens, because, we don't
know if a lot of people can take it, really.
Yeah, that's...
Because it does get kind of interesting.
Yeah. Now, is it slice of life, or that's a slice of life?
It's a slice of life, but we're going to say that's a slice of life, like we say, break every chain.
Right.
If we use slice of life...
Which is cooler, because it's on my page.
Yeah, if we use slice of life, that ties into Dexter, but if we say that's a slice of life, and people actually watch this, they actually know what we're talking about. Oh, shit.
Oh, crap.